Black Girls Code. And I'm so excited to have these lovely ladies from Pay who are going to give us a wonderful conversation and talk around 10 tips to starting your career in tech. I'm going to hand it over to our moderator and host for the next hour, Gabby, to get us started and to introduce the panel. But thanks to everyone for joining us, and I hope you have a great conversation. Also, I'll say really quickly, we are accepting questions, so feel free to use the chat or the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to submit any questions that you have for the panelists, and we'll have time a little bit at the end to address those questions. Again, thanks so much for coming out. Hope you enjoy the session.
Thank you so much, Anisha. Hi, everyone. My name is Gabby, and welcome to 10 Tips for Starting Your Tech Career in Tech. I am Gabby. I'm an account manager for the company Pay. And for those of you who haven't heard of Pay, we're a fintech company based out of New York City, and we protect e-commerce merchants from fraud. I'm going to give you a chance, girls, to introduce yourselves. So first, let's start off with Amanda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda. I'm 28, and I've been working at Pay for 8-9 months now, and I've been in the finance industry for about 9 years.
Samantha.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam. I'm the Director of Marketing at Pay. I have about 7 years experience working at tech startups in a marketing or creative design capacity. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here with all of you.
Cindy.
Hi, my name is Cindy, and I'm the product manager here at Pay. I started as the solutions engineer. And before this, well, I was here for 3 years, and before this, I was in fashion.
Nina.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I have been working at Pay since June. I work on the strategic partnership side, and I have been in the fintech industry for the past couple of years. And before that, I was in banking.
And finally, Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca. I work in ISO relations here at Pay. I'm a bit newer to the fintech space. Prior to working at Pay, I've been in retail for the last 10 years. So excited to be here and excited to be in this industry that's a little bit newer for me.
Thank you, ladies. And once again, I'm Gabrielle. I'm the account manager at Pay. I have been in media and tech for 7 years, and before that I was in law. So I'm super excited to be here and hosting and introduce you to the ladies of Pay. So why don't we go ahead and just kick it off? I'm going to start with the first thing that kind of gets you in the door to working at any kind of company, and that's your resume. So there's kind of a formula. It's what you did, how you did it, and the result. So that's kind of a basic formula for creating your resume. You need a website, so create your LinkedIn. Make sure that your LinkedIn profile and your resume both match. The aesthetics to your resume are super important. Remember, they don't know what you look like. They don't know your personality. All they know is that resume right in front of you. That's the first glimpse into who you are as an employee. So make sure that it's aesthetically pleasing, so a professional font. Make sure that it stays consistent and relevant to your current job search. So while I know that a lot of you have experience in fashion and maybe camp counseling during the summer, during high school or college, make sure that you keep it relevant to a tech-based resume. Also, make sure it's concise, yet super informative, and use action language, accomplished, created, all of that fun stuff. So now that your resume is in to your hopefully future employer, we want to talk about the first step, which is the interview. Now, I always get nerves when it comes to interviewing, and that is totally normal. So Cindy and I have talked about this a little bit, and the next step is kind of what you can do to prep for that interview, and that's practicing for the interview. So Cindy, I kind of wanted to get your feedback on that, if you can give some advice to our lovely attendees.
Yes, of course. I mean, I'm always nervous, and even for the interviews, and I've been in so many, I'm even nervous for this right now because I haven't had enough practice, and practice makes perfect. Honestly, the more prepared I am for anything, the less nervous I am and the more confident I feel because I know I put in the work, I know what to expect, and I practice. Part of that is also doing the exercises online for the type of job that you're interviewing. There's amazing tools online that you can go in and go exercise problems for a database, for algorithms, and a lot of things that you think that they will quiz you on for those first steps in the first interviews. And one thing that I try not to beat myself up for is making mistakes. We're all human, and we make mistakes, but it's how you overcome that. So whenever, I can't say that I killed every interview that I've done, I've made mistakes, but what really shined through is that afterwards I wrote down what I messed up on, did the research, and then actually followed up with that to say, hey, I took the initiative. I didn't just make the mistake and let that go through. I went back and actually learned about it. And that really does shine through. And even if you don't get 100% right, that's fine. Like when I'm interviewing other people for the positions in pay, I'm not looking for them to have the right answers. I'm looking them to have the right tools of critical thinking to problem solve. Like most of the times in the company, it's gonna be, we have all these challenges and we have to have the right people with the right minds and problem solving minds to be able to overcome the challenges that we have. And that's pretty much what I do for preparing for interviews.
Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, definitely. I totally know about the nerves and the making the mistakes and stumbling. It's so common. The next topic that we wanted to talk about is during the interview. What kind of message can you bring across to that employer? And that is a positive one. You always want to stay positive. You want to leave on a positive note. You don't want to complain, even though they might ask you difficult questions. Nina, I remember when you were interviewing for the position and your supervisor actually came to me and said that you were super positive. So I wanted to get your feedback on that.
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Gabby, for bringing that very important point up, especially, when you're in your round one, your first face-to-face interview. I think it is obvious that the interviewer is going to ask you about what are some of the most challenging experiences you've had, whether it's at a previous employer and how you overcame them. So, and same thing happened to me as well, because when I interviewed for pay, COVID was going strong. This was May or June. And my, now VP asked me that how, tell me about a trip that was just very challenging, or tell me about a time that's, how are you keeping up during COVID and what's going on. And I feel like I have heard a lot of people now have gotten into the rut of sort of, bringing it on as a negative experience, which it is. It's been hard on everyone, but your future employer, especially during this time, wants to hear how you're making the best of it. So bring up something constructive that you have done during the time off that you've had, or just the extra time that we all now have because you're not commuting to work and stuff like that. If you definitely do not bring up just negative things about previous employers or internships or professors. If it was a challenging experience and opportunity, you can talk about it and then talk about how you were able to overcome that, because essentially that's what the employers are looking for, because that's pretty much most days you are, surrounded by different problems or challenges, or you're trying to troubleshoot, and you're working with teams, which is so many different people of different personalities. So you've got to be good with dealing with all of that. Companies look for solutions-oriented, upbeat people. So they don't want, anyone who's going to bring the team morale down. And it's a big thing, you have to be a good cultural fit. And that's also one of the things my VP told me, that this is going to be a cultural fit. It has to be a cultural fit for the company. So never underestimate that. And one thing definitely, when you're in the tech industry, if you're looking for startups or companies that are huge, like Google or Uber or whatever, they are innovative companies. They know that their most valuable resource is their human resources, and they want entrepreneurial people who by nature are optimists. So keep that in mind. And they want to see that spirit in their future employees. So with that, as you go through your interview, keeping that in mind, once you're done with your round one, make sure to always send up a follow-up email or a thank you email, because you cannot, you have to stand out from, if they're interviewing like 10 people over the course of 2 weeks, by the time they make their decision, it might be, 14 days down after when you interviewed. So make sure, send up a follow-up email that they will remember you. You say something, that you bring up something that you talked about that was very interesting. You can even ask questions. Make sure to personalize it. Don't just send a general thank you email that looks like you've taken it off the internet. So make it, even if it has to be short, but say something meaningful. And always remember, have the mindset that you are also somewhat interviewing them. You're amazing, and you are also going to be an asset. You're going to be an asset to the company, and they want to hire you because you're an asset. So make sure to figure out if you like the company, you like the culture, if it's a good fit, and talk about the culture. And those are some of my tips on navigating round one face-to-face interview.
Thanks, Nina. Yeah, definitely the follow-up notes are huge. I remember in my first interview, I totally didn't even know that you were supposed to send one. And my dad was the one who actually said, did you send a follow-up note thanking them for their time? So that's super important. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, and kind of our next tip, was exuding confidence, body language. You can probably see as I'm talking, I use my hands a lot. I do that all the time, even if I'm not presenting, just in day-to-day conversation. But body language is super important when you're coming across to the future employer. Sam, I interviewed with you. You were one of the people who interviewed me. And I know that we've spoken about my interview with you a bunch of times. And I just kind of wanted to get your feedback on what body language and that kind of confidence that people exude, what it brings to that interview.
Thanks, Gabby. I cannot emphasize enough how much of a difference it will make if you walk into an interview or a meeting, or you're doing a presentation and you come off as confident. When you're confident and charismatic, you begin to build trust with people, and people want to be around you. If you look like you believe in yourself, people will believe in you too. And I say look confident because it doesn't really matter if you are or aren't. Maybe you're someone that is truly confident on a day-to-day, and you know what you're doing, you know how to solve problems. But when you get into the interview or in front of a big group of people, you get kind of nervous. You feel your heart beating, and maybe your body language closes up. On the flip side, maybe you are someone who is feeling a little bit insecure. You might be feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome, questioning whether or not you deserve this job or you have the skills for it. Either way, all that matters is that you are perceived as confident. And the way to do that is to practice and fake it until you make it. The more you practice, the more you will embody that, and the more you will become that. Practice what you're going to say in an interview over and over again. If you think I didn't practice what I was going to be telling all of you girls today, well, you're totally wrong. I practiced. So you better walk into an interview having rehearsed a few things about yourself, about your experience, and how you can add value to the company. Practice it like a script, so there's no hesitating. There are no ums, there are no likes. You have the ability to focus on your body language and looking them in the eye, because you already know what you're going to say. That leads me to the other point about body language. Body language tells the interviewer something that words don't. Confidence. I mean, words show confidence too, but you've all heard actions speak louder than words. So while your words and your mouth might be doing this, if your body language doesn't really match up with what you're saying, then that's going to create mistrust. What you do with your body, using hand gestures, being open, reaching out to give that firm handshake, looking someone in the eye, is going to make the person who's interviewing trust you and believe in you. I was once lucky enough, this is my last little bit, I won't drag this on, but I was lucky enough to have dinner once with the CEO of one of the biggest media agencies in North America. And I will never forget that she told me she wakes up every day before work and feels like she's acting. She's acting when she's in a meeting. She's acting when she's doing a presentation. In the morning when she picks her outfit, she's thinking about it like she's on a set, picking her wardrobe based on who she's meeting that day, how she wants to be perceived. Is it casual? Is it formal? Is it serious? So just think about that for a little bit. She's probably 50 or 60 years old and she still practices. She's a CEO. She's a boss. I promise if you continue to practice every day, you will become to be more confident with yourself. You will truly believe that. You will begin to remove all of that imposter syndrome that's within you, and you will continue to impress people and nail interviews.
I completely agree, Sam. Thanks so much. Definitely something that we wanted to talk about is the confidence. So you have that confidence, you've expressed that confidence, and then you start the difficult discussion of salary and all of the negotiations that come with it. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but the importance of it is to know your worth. So you exude that confidence. Now it's time to know and actually do that research. Cindy, you and I have spoken about this a bunch of times, because in media and in tech, it's very different for an account manager and a product manager than it is for an account manager and a client success person in a law firm. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about salary negotiation and knowing your worth in the industry.
Yeah, thanks, Gabby. I absolutely love talking about this subject, only because I feel like it's not spoken or told enough. I've never been trained, but I definitely brought the experiences that I've had to really do my research and knowing how much, like how to negotiate salary. Step one that I always do for every job is I research, I Google what is the average salary in my area. But even better, I go to Glassdoor. Glassdoor is my best friend when I'm interviewing, because most companies are in there, and most companies state the average salary of the company that you're interviewing and even the position. So you go in knowing what the average is. So you're not going in like thinking about what they're gonna like guess. Sorry, my Google's going off. Well, you go in knowing what the average is and starting your negotiating tactic. So let's talk about that. So we say that the average is about 50, then I would go in for a reaching goal, which I would ask for at least 65. And that's what we start off with. You never want to start low, because every salary is essentially negotiable unless they state otherwise. But if you go in with the amount that you want to walk away with, most likely you won't. So you want to aim high and then go a little bit lower, and you then essentially you would settle for the amount that you're happy to walk away with. This is also important because if you haven't had the thought process, or you talk to yourself about what's the amount that you're happy, that even if you walk away with an amount that's good enough, you feel like you've been cheated, or and that happened to me many times, where it's like it was more than enough that I even could imagine, but then I was just like, oh, maybe I could have asked for more. So you don't want to have that feeling. And let's talk about if the salary is not negotiable, and that's fine. If you walk away with a little bit, if it's not negotiable, it's fine. But the question that you should ask yourself is the experience good enough? Is it good enough for you? Because most likely than not, like the experience will carry you the longer in your career than it will be the dollar amount. The dollar amount not necessarily says how well you do your job or how well you can do your job. The experience really does exude that. And if you settle for less in a company that the salary was negotiable, but you settled for less, there are other things that you can negotiate. One thing that I've done previously is ask my boss, is there a time that we can reevaluate my performance after I start to get to the salary goal that I originally wanted? Because at that time, then I'll have time to prove to them that I can do the job. And yeah, that's pretty much everything that I have to say about that.
Yeah, it's definitely a topic that I know is uncomfortable and not spoken about enough. But I actually met with a recruiter the other night, and she told an employer once, if you want a rock star, you got to pay for a rock star. So it's super important to actually go in there knowing your worth and knowing what the field actually sees in the industry. So another important aspect of your own personal growth in any kind of field is finding a mentor. I know that I still speak to the woman who hired me at my first media startup to this day. She's still a reference that I put on every single one of my final interview emails if they ask for references. And I haven't worked with her in about 5 years, but she works for Amazon now. She's super successful, and she just always has the best advice moving forward in any kind of job that you can possibly imagine. So Sam, I know that you were talking about your mentor and how important it was for people to find one and stick with one in their entire careers. So can you talk a little bit about your experience and what advice you have for some of our attendees?
Yeah, absolutely. If I had to pick one thing that happened to me in my career that led me to where I am today, I would honestly say it has been working with my first mentor. I guess I could call him that. So for about 4 years ago, I was living in Toronto and I was working at a ad tech startup, and the company hired an outside management consultant to come in. And what he did was an entire reorganization of all the different teams. And this process started with a company-wide meeting that everyone was in, and he was asking individual questions to each member of the company, trying to figure out who was doing what, how the different teams were working together. And at one point he asked, who here knows marketing? And I raised my hand, and then he looked around, no one else raised their hand. So he said, who's on the marketing team? And I was the only person with my hand still up because there was no marketing team. I was there as a junior designer. That's how I joined the company. But I really wanted to do marketing. I studied marketing in school and I really wanted to do it. So a few weeks later, we find out they're restructuring the teams, and now there's going to be a brand new marketing team. Guess who's in charge? Me. I'm the team lead. I was freaking out. I had insane imposter syndrome. I didn't think I was good enough. I had anxiety. I questioned like what I was doing, why I was even put in this role. And that kind of led me to bugging this consultant whenever I got a couple moments of his time with my problems. And I'd come to him and I would seek his advice on how to approach specific marketing challenges or how to manage a certain person on my team, perhaps. And I didn't get very much time with him. He was in back-to-back meetings with the C-level team, but I pushed myself to do the uncomfortable. At the end of the day, he'd be putting on his jacket, leaving, and I'd flag him down and I'd come to him with my problem. And just getting 2 or 3 minutes of his time, it was probably max 5 minutes that I talked to him, was golden because he had 25 more years experience doing what I was trying to figure out on my own. So I'd be confused about something and overthink it the entire day. And then in 2 minutes, he would point me in the right direction. And I had complete confidence. I took his advice, I applied it, and that catapulted my career. After I left that company, I continued to talk to him here and there when I was transitioning between jobs at key milestones in my life and in my career. I would still reach out. So really the value there is that this person has so much more practice and experience than I ever had. And that's the value you get from a mentor. You get to take insight and wisdom and experience from someone who's been doing what you're trying to do. And they have, let's say this guy had 25 years of experience, and then I got to take that and then apply it. It's almost like cheating, you'd think. So that's really the value of a mentor. And then I want to talk about finding a mentor. Finding a mentor could feel kind of intimidating. First of all, I just want to say that all of us on this panel would be more than happy to talk to you. So afterwards, we are going to be sharing our LinkedIn information if you want to reach out. And the second piece of advice I have is just focus on the current challenge you're facing. So whether you're at the stage where you're making a resume or you're in the interview process, or maybe you just got a brand new job and you're worried or stressing about something specific, just don't think too much about finding a mentor. Think about what is the challenge that you have now, and is there someone who you've met or someone in your life that you can ask for advice to? Because their wisdom and their experience is going to catapult your success. It's going to put you ahead of your peers because you're getting access to that experience. So yeah, that's where I would start. And I really do think it's one of the most valuable things that you can do.
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, definitely love my mentor. She's awesome. So Amanda, girl, haven't heard from you yet.
Hi, I know.
So now that you have your mentor, and she's my mentor, Dawn always used to say, you know, when I'm gone, if I'm not here at this company anymore, you know, make sure you consistently show how you can be valuable. Amanda, I know what an asset you have been. You started maybe about a week after I did at Pay, and we saw a change immediately because you proved your value. Can you talk a little bit about why that's important, what you do, kind of best practices for that?
Right. Yeah. So I'm the office manager at Pay. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. I think I was a little too nervous. But yeah, so I started in March, and one of the major things that my boss said to me, so I report directly to the CEO, and one of the major things that he said to me is that he needs somebody who is going to keep his head on straight. And for me, that's taking tasks off of his plate. You know, if you take on more responsibilities and kind of clearing their schedule, they will remember that, because that shows that, you know, you have ingenuity, that shows that you are responsible and you are able to handle more things. And, you know, a lot of the protocols and procedures that we had in place at the time, I mean, they were working, but there's nothing that can't be improved. Just because it's working doesn't mean it can't be improved. And also, you know, being a positive person in the workplace, believe it or not, you know, as corny as it may sound, it is a skill. You know, no one likes to be around a person who's grumpy and who has a bad attitude. And people will definitely call on you more if you're a pleasure to work around. And I think also being cross-trained is a huge thing. It definitely takes more time and money to hire a person off of the street to do a job than having a person in-house who is able to do many different things and wear different hats. You know, there's been plenty of times when Gabby and I have had to work on things or jump in for the other person when one was out or off doing something else. And it just saves a lot more time, and you show that you are able to learn different things as well.
Yeah, Amanda, I'll never forget that last minute project that we had to jump in on a Friday and dive into an Excel program that Amanda had never even looked at data before, but she was so willing to just kind of jump in and help me out because we were on a time crunch. And, you know, just another way that she provided immense value to the company, which she does every single day. So you showed that you added value to your employer and to your manager. The next thing is the importance of checking in and staying consistent with your manager. You have to remember that they run a team. They're just another employee at the company, but it's important to check in with them, not only for, you know, updates and make sure that you're staying accountable with your tasks, but also in case you need a time off, you're a little bit bombarded. Nina, you and I report to this same person, and you and I both know how difficult he can be to nail down. I kind of wanted to get your feedback on what best practices you have put into place to kind of wrangling in your managers and making sure to stay on top of them and checking in with them.
Yeah, definitely, Gabby. And, you know, thanks again for putting that question in front of me, because like Gabby said, we share the same manager, and we totally understand that it can be a challenge sometimes for, you know, managers that are not just running their team. They're not just managing people, but they're also have other responsibilities and work that they need to, you know, do. They're being pulled into several meetings. So I would kind of like to divide this part into two. The first thing is, obviously you need to know where you stand in terms of performance, in terms of your future goals, where you're headed in your career. So that's why, you know, you're, you know, checking in with your manager, whether it's like an annual performance review or a semi-annual performance review, your weekly meetings. Like I have a weekly one-on-one with my manager, and I kind of found that to be easier because I sent him a recurring invite. And now that time is kind of just like blocked off every week, and he knows that, you know, this is sort of the time. So otherwise I was initially, when I first started, it was a little bit tough. We were having to reschedule a lot of time. So yeah, definitely make sure you are, and remember, you are in charge of, you know, being proactive, always trying to get feedback, always trying to, if there's any issues, ping them, email them, whatever. You're not being annoying. It's only because they have a lot on their plate, probably more than you because they're managing a team as well, that you definitely need to take the initiative, and they want to see you take the initiative. And the second part is obviously, your manager needs to know where you are at all times. So you can never, overshare or not overshare. I mean, you can never provide too much information in terms of even if you're going to be gone in the afternoon for a couple of hours, make sure someone knows. You don't want to be in the position where you are called on for something, or they need you to pop into a meeting or a call or something, and no one knows where you are. So always keep your manager informed. Someone should know. And in terms of, time off, I feel sometimes, maybe in smaller companies, people can tend to just talk verbally to the manager and then forget about, sending them an email or something about their vacation time or time off. I've done that. I've made that mistake. I spoke with my manager, hey, I will be gone for a week, in March, and then later on I find out that, oh, he didn't remember. So best to get it in writing, an email, or get it approved in the HR portal, so you have all your ducks in a row. Also, good to keep in mind, always try to give as much notice as possible, especially for extended vacation. Keep like a 2-week notice guideline if it's going to be extended time off. Just makes you look like you're responsible, you care, these are some of my tips and why it's so important to always check in with your manager.
Yeah, definitely. I know that I gave my manager an update. I think it was last week that I was going to be out in 2 weeks from then or 3 weeks from then. And he joked around and he was like, that's not enough time to let me know. But it's super important just to kind of keep your manager up to date on everything that you're doing, kind of progresses, any kind of issues that you're having, just to make sure that not only is he happy with, or she happy with your performance, but you're happy as well with the job that you're doing and what you're seeing throughout the company. So you have your job, you check in with your manager, you're doing all of these wonderful things, but you have to focus on the fact that this is just the beginning. And while this might be your first job, it's not going to be your last. And it's definitely not going to be the one that you stick out with your entire career. Or maybe it is, but most likely it's not. Rebecca, are you still there?
Hey, girl.
Okay. All right, good. Just making sure I didn't lose you because we haven't heard from you. I work with Rebecca on the day-to-day. She's one of my sellers. She's an amazing employee. And, she just started in fintech, and her and I both know what it's like to cross over from industries and what a challenge it can be. But I wanted to kind of get her perspective on, how this is just the beginning, and one of her favorite quotes that she's going to talk about that kind of helps you move from job to job. So go ahead, Rebecca, take it away.
Yeah, so thanks, Gabby, for passing it off. So one of my favorite quotes is actually from Oprah. It's something that I've always kept in the back of my mind, and it's kind of always been a guideline for me. And the quote is, you do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. And the way that I interpret this is that not every job is going to be your dream job, but that doesn't mean that the job that you're currently doing doesn't have value. Every job is a stepping stone to build out your skill set. You are building that skill set to hopefully use again in the future. You never know when that could come in handy again, when you might use that later on. So when you're interviewing, try to keep your skill set on a more broader level. Don't get too caught up in the details and in the weeds, but see how on a bigger picture, how you can use a previous skill for a potential new job opportunity. In some instances, you may take a job that might be only good for a year or two. And then in other instances, you might find a job that you may not love the day-to-day, but you really love the company culture or the benefits. It's really important to also remember that sometimes you will have to compromise on things, but don't forget about your non-negotiables. Believe it or not, it is okay to turn down a job. I know that seems like a really foreign concept, but it is okay. If you can't come to an agreement on salary, or if you think that your personal values are being compromised, then don't take a job. We spend so many hours a week doing a job. So you really want to make sure that when you take this job that you are happy with some aspect of it, because otherwise you don't want to end up resenting the job, which could potentially compromise your performance later on. And keep in mind that your dream job, or this dream job that we talk about, it can change over time. So this dream job that you've always wanted at 19 can be very different at 29. And that's okay, because that's going to change as you evolve as a person and as you get more experience in your career. So another point that I also would love to bring up is that if a company doesn't hire you, it's not you, it's them. Remember that you're interviewing a company just as much as they're interviewing you. Companies don't hold all the power. Sometimes on paper, a job might seem like the perfect fit, but once you start talking to the people or seeing the company culture or the office atmosphere, you may find that it's not the actual right fit for you after all. And just because you don't get a job doesn't mean that you're not qualified. And the final point that I like to also raise, which I know Cindy and Sam also talked about it a little bit earlier, is practice. Practice interviewing. Go on job interviews for jobs that you may not even want or that you don't even think that you're qualified for, because that way, build up that confidence. And that way, when you find that job or that dream job that you're hoping to get, you'll feel so much better going into it, having the practice of interviewing and asking questions. So you'll be ready and confident to go when it's your dream job.
Thanks, Rebecca. I totally agree with you. I've been on so many interviews that I was telling the girls the other day, the employer, I didn't know if I wanted the job. It was lower than what I wanted in pay, but I went anyway. And the potential employer put his dog on the table during the interview. So definitely a great practice interview, but not my dream job. And totally agree. My dream job at 21 was to be a prosecutor, and my dream job at 31 was to be the director of account management. And I'm an account manager still. So I think that Rebecca hit, every touch point. It's going to change over time, and it's okay to not get a job. So I want to shift a little bit and go back to you, Amanda. As the one woman of color at Pay, I wanted to get your perspective on how to navigate the workforce as a woman of color during, the kind of difficult times that we're seeing right now. I wanted to hear what you had to offer, just because I know you're a super optimistic person, and I just wanted to, pick your brain a little bit about this and to offer the attendees a little bit of a way to navigate that.
Right. Yeah, when I first started working, I felt like I had the idea in my mind that I had to code switch, that I had to downplay my personality, because I thought that in doing so, I would be more acceptable or amenable in the corporate environment. And, that's not the case. Obviously, there's a standard of being, professional, obviously, but having to downplay yourself in that environment, it shifts the conversation from the actual issues that we are facing in the corporate environment. And I guess that kind of ties into, speaking up. Unfortunately, as women of color, we have that stereotype on us where if we're speaking up, we are the angry Black woman. And, if we don't speak up, we're considered disinterested and incompetent. And I have found in many cases where I would regret not speaking up for myself. You have too much knowledge and you have too much experience to not want to share that with your coworkers and with your colleagues. And, it does help in dispelling those behaviors and those myths that you are aggressive and assertive and angry because you are an effective communicator. And that's not true. There's that old adage of you catch more bees with honey than you do vinegar. As funny as it is, beating people into submission with a positive attitude does work. People have no choice but to accept you for the intelligent communicator and young woman that you are if all you are giving them is that. You know, there have been plenty of times where I wanted to get out of my character and let people know how it is. And I would have to take a step back and realize that was only going to set me back, because they were not going to see me as Amanda, the person who knows what she's doing. They were going to see me, Amanda, here she goes. Here's that loud one. And that wasn't going to do me any good in the long run. You know, so it has definitely helped me, you know, gain the respect of people around me and build those relationships that I needed to continue in my career. And I think probably the biggest tip would be get used to being uncomfortable. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be the only Black woman, if not only Black person in that room. And for me, I never let that deter me. You know, when you're uncomfortable, you're prepared, because you know if you're not prepared, then that room is going to eat you alive. And I knew that I always had to be on top of my stuff and the information around of the people around me, because I had to make sure that I did not look like I didn't know what I was doing and that I didn't belong at the table with my counterparts. You know, keep speaking up, keep showing up. I know it is overwhelming and it gets tiring. And sometimes you feel like people are not noticing you for the work that you're producing. And I promise you, they will. Keep persevering, you know, keep demonstrating your best efforts and you will shine.
I love everything you said. You are such a pillar of optimism for these young women and for all of us in the office. I mean, working with you is definitely just a privilege and an honor. Just because you are one of those people that exudes that optimistic attitude. And that's something that we really have to keep in mind, especially with everything that's going on nowadays. So,
yeah, definitely.
Everyone, we have reached the end of our 10 tips for starting your career. I'm just going to go over them briefly. So number 1, build your resume. 2, you're a problem solver. Go into the interview prepping for technical questions. Number 3, keep a positive attitude. 4, you're interviewing them too, kind of how to navigate this interview. 5, body language and how to show confidence. Fake it until you make it in practice. 6, know your worth. So the salary negotiation. 7, find a mentor. It's the key to early success. 8, share how you can add value to the company. 9, this is the only beginning. And remember that quote that Rebecca said, you do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. And 10, as a woman of color, how to navigate the workforce. I want to thank my panelists, my lovely coworkers and ladies of Pay. And now I'm going to turn it over. I think we had a bunch of questions come in, Anisha. So I'm just going to go to see what we have. And let's see. Okay. So, Carolyn, you asked, what majors in college did you pursue? This ties in a little bit to some other questions, and I'm going to kind of consolidate with another question that Nina, we had spoken about. So how did what you studied in college impact your career choices? So what majors in college did you pursue? Nina, can you kind of take that and answer that question for Carolyn?
Yes, definitely. That's a great question too, Carolyn. And if you're trying to pursue a career in tech, obviously, you know, computer science stands out as a obvious major. And then there's great data science programs as well. And also, Cindy can tell more about this, but there are other technical courses as well that even if you do not want to pursue a 4-year computer science degree, there, you know, you can know how to program, you can learn how to code, and you can also get a start in your tech career that way. Me personally, my background, my college major was finance, and then my graduate school, I did my MBA also in finance and international business. That, you know, I started off in banking, but then I kind of pivoted to tech as well. And I think my understanding of, because finance is a major that goes very well with technical, if I could do a technical course or whatever. So I always knew that I want to get into tech. So that's why I went into fintech. So that's a little bit more about my background.
Nice. Okay. So Raina would it be good to ask teachers and professors to be a mentor for you? Sam, you're the mentor queen.
Mhm. I actually saw that Nina jumped into the chat, and she's absolutely right. In the chat, she wrote, teachers and professors are great resources because they have alumni connections in the industry and they can connect you to others. And that is absolutely true. I would say anyone who you have a little bit of a relationship with, don't hesitate to reach out and ask for their advice. Ask if they might know someone. Actually, very recently, our CEO, his niece, and she's trying to figure out what she should study in school. She's graduating high school right now. And she reached out to me. He asked me first. He said, is it okay if my niece sends you a text message? Gladly. And she asked me, a little bit about UX and UI and what's the difference of it and what to take in school and what jobs are in demand right now. And I shared an article that I recently came across online. It was in a platform called InDesign. They do blog posts in the tech space, specifically in design. And they recently published an article of like the top 10 jobs that are in demand right now in tech. And so I shared that with her, and UX and UI were on there. But yeah, so it's really just about reaching out. Just don't be too nervous or too shy. Just take the leap and ask for that advice.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, next question is from Dan. Is it true that tech companies only hire people under 35? Let's see, who can I go to with that? Does anyone want to kind of jump in and offer a response?
Well, I would say definitely that's not true. Tech people only hire people under 35? Is
Yes.
that what you said?
Question.
Well, we just hired a CFO, and we work at a tech company, and he's definitely older than 35.
I have to be like,
And we also have
Yeah.
sales reps that are definitely over 35.
yes,
I was just gonna say, just jump in a little bit out that because I know a lot of friends that kind of started their tech career later on in their 30s, and I think tech is one industry you can choose to start your career whenever you gain that skill set. So definitely don't worry about the age.
yeah, our CTO started the same day as I did, and also definitely not under 35. I mean, I'm right on the cusp. I was 33. I'm 34 now, and this is one of my first tech companies. So I definitely think the age is not something that people are allowed to ask you in an interview process as well, in New York. So if someone does, kind of gloss it over. Don't say it's none of your business or that's inappropriate. Just kind of go with, I've had a lot of experience for my age. That's all. Instead of actually answering that question, because they're not allowed to ask that for you. Just for your information. Okay, next. Kemi asked, how do you navigate getting a job with no experience? I'm going to jump in a little bit on that because, as I said, this was the first tech company that I've worked for, and fintech company. As I said, I was in law for 6 years and I was in media for 6.5. Your skill set should be kind of universal. You should be able to bring whatever you can to the table. So for account management, I like to say, I like to bring my clients the warm and fuzzies because with account management, it's a lot of relationship building. And that can be across the board of any industry. It can go from law to media to tech to being a hostess at a restaurant. It's kind of a universal skill set. One of the best things that I think one of the girls touched on bringing value to the company, that was Amanda, is if you do show how you can bring value, it's kind of a no-brainer. Amanda, you want to touch a little bit about, going into different environments and industries?
Yeah, so I started off, my first job ever was McDonald's. I went from McDonald's and then I worked in real estate for a little bit. Then from real estate, I went into finance, and then now I landed into financial tech. So, I mean, to be completely transparent, a lot of it was fake it till you make it. A lot of the skills that I developed without them knowing that I was developing them at their job. Google was my best friend. Having a mentor, like we've talked about, was paramount for me. Having someone that, could kind of give me those little inside, tricks and tips on what I was doing, really helped me out. I think once you get on the job, at least for me, I'm a person that learns as I do. So for me, once I got at the job, it was easier for me to, I guess, acquire my skill set than telling someone I don't have that skill set, but I can learn it. I told people I knew it.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's always a learning experience anywhere you go. So there's going to be something where you join any job where you are not going to have experience in it. And you just got to come in with guns blazing and pretend like you know exactly what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah, I do want to say it's not, sorry, Gabby.
No,
I do want to say we're not brain surgeons here. Tech, you're not operating on someone. So you can absolutely fake it until you make it. You can say you do have certain skills that you might have only read about, but you're going to figure it out on the job. Mm-hmm. I can't emphasize that enough because, yeah, we're not operating on someone. It's not a life or death situation. So,
for sure. We always used to say in media, it's just advertising. So, I mean, it's a universal skill that you can always bring across the board. Let's see. We have another question. So, Cindy, I'm shooting this your way. Since you are one of the women that actually does coding in our company, Rockstar, we call her. What are the challenges you faced as a woman pursuing STEM or CS? How did you overcome those challenges? And what resources were you able to leverage in facing those challenges? So
that's a great question. I never really see myself as overcoming challenges as women in STEM, more of just the challenges that I overcome with anything that I do in my life. My biggest challenge is the fear of failure. The fear of failure basically makes me think that I shouldn't do it. I shouldn't even start it. In reality, the best slogan advice that I can give everybody that everybody knows is from Nike: just do it. Just do it. And then you are actually doing something instead of stopping yourself from saying that you're not good enough, you're not smart enough. Actions speak louder than words. And even Elon Musk, and he's the smartest person that I feel like lives in this earth at this moment, says he even overthinks things. So he has learned to just stop overthinking about the theories and the edge cases and all that stuff and just do it. I mean, from my background, the biggest step on that was I went to school to FIT for fashion. I pursued that career in fashion and manufacturing. I was in all of that. And then all of a sudden I heard about boot camps and I was like in CS. And it's like, I didn't even know what computer science was. So that was my biggest fear. It's like, I don't think I'm smart enough. All I know is fashion. I'm not good at math. But the thing that really powered me through that is that I know I'm a hard worker. And when I work hard on anything, even though I'm not the smartest person, I know I get the outcome that I want. So that's definitely the attitude that you definitely need and has carried me along many times. In the position that I am in now, I've never had the experience as a product manager, and I'm learning from my mentor, which is my CTO, which has a lot of experience on it. And I don't say oh, I can't do it because I'm not smart enough. It's how can I learn this? Where can I go and learn more things? I Google all the time, and studying. Hard work really takes you a long way.
I completely agree. Oh, we got a new one in. La Chisley says, oh, this is a great question. Rebecca, it's coming towards you. Since you spoke about company culture, when applying for a job, how do you inquire about company culture? That's a really good question. Rebecca, you want to answer that?
That is a really great question. I think asking just what the day-to-day is and what people do, or if there is some sort of, I think being able to have people come together, and if they do have a camaraderie, or is there things that are there outings that people do, asking those kinds of questions are actually, it's a great way to get a feel of what the company is like. before I came to Pay, similar to Cindy, I worked in retail for so many years, and retail is a whole different beast than being in fintech. And coming over to Pay, I really wanted a company that was laid back, but also worked hard, and that people worked together and had this camaraderie. And from being able to also speak to different people within the company, I spoke with Sam and all other different people. Everybody had such positive things to say about the company and had such positive feedback about working with their other coworkers. So also picking up on little social cues of things like that when people are encouraged about talking about their coworkers, it really shows that how great of a company that is. So really try to listen in on the little finder words and the little things that people say, because it actually will teach you so much. And just sit back is really my advice. Sit back and listen. Ask questions, but sit back and listen, and you'll learn so much from people from just listening and getting all of their advice.
So kind of like a follow-up question that we just got. How do you know the culture is like a right fit? Like, when you and I had our first one-on-one, I will say, Rebecca, we scheduled about a 15-minute one-on-one to just meet, and we wound up speaking for like an hour.
Yeah.
So, I mean, before you even met me, how did you know that it was a right fit, and how do you know going into it?
I am a big fan of creating pro-con lists, or creating a list of just what are important values for you. And I touched upon this earlier, what's important to you at one age is going to be different than what it is when you're later on in your career. What was really important to me 10 years ago is very different than what is important to me now. Finding a job that had flexibility and understanding was really important to me looking for right now. So create that list really stop and think about it of like, what are your non-negotiables? What are things can you maybe compromise on? Or what are things that, like I thought this was important, but maybe it's not. Maybe I can take a little bit less of a salary given that we get summer Fridays. There are these little things that you have to think about. And then when you go into an interview and when you start really going through that process, you'll have a better idea of like what I can compromise on or what I really want and what it's a goal for me.
I completely agree. All right, Danielle, specific advice for what to include and feature on your resume. So I'm going to take it just because I did the resume part. I think that the best thing, so part of my job is not only an account management, but a little bit in sales. If you are in sales, this is one thing to do, is to show a percentage increase in revenue that you've built. So say you were able to grow an account by 42%, throw that in there. Show what you've accomplished. Show what kind of procedures you set into place. If you are in product, what kind of stories you've built. Like Cindy does that all the time, is she keeps saying on a new story that she's building for coding. Cindy, can I get a little bit of your feedback from a product side on what to include? Because I know it's a little bit different than an account manager side.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry if my dog is crying in the background. I think she wants water and I'm neglecting her. I would say cater your resume based on the type of company and position you're working for. If you want to go more into data analysts, cater your experience on queries that you've done. If you're in there for software engineering, say like what things have you optimized, or if you're going in for UI, UX, or product design, just make your resume applicable on the skill sets that they're looking for. Don't generalize it, because then it doesn't seem like you're honed in and you're the person to hire for. They want to see your resume and say, okay, this person has everything that we're looking for and they're a perfect fit. And sometimes by generalizing with everything that you've done doesn't really portray that. Your resume is a representation of the skill sets that you have for that job.
Thanks. Yeah, I definitely think that is the perfect advice for, people that are going for tech and product. It really depends on what kind of job you're going for. You can tailor your resume completely based on the job that you're going for and revamp it every single time. I kind of like to do that just to make sure the action words are correct, that if I did implement a process that was different at one job than it was at another job, that I tailor it that way. So I think we have time for one more question. Am I good on time, Anisha? Let me see. Almost 8 o'clock. Okay. So let's see, Rebecca, one more. What motivated you to support yourself on your journey, and what additional support would have been helpful on your journey?
Yeah, so for me, this is like a really basic concept that my parents taught me and from a really early age that I'm a firm believer in, and that's you treat others the way that you want to be treated. So just because somebody else doesn't act the way that you would expect them to doesn't mean that you can't. There is no I in team. So at the end of the day, everyone at a company, your goal is all the same. You may have different roles within that company, but what you all want to accomplish is always going to be the same thing. The additional support that I wish I had that would have been helpful on my journey is to not be afraid to stand up for yourself and to speak up. Don't rely on others and assume that they're going to do that for you. Over the years, I've definitely had some really amazing bosses who have been super supportive, taken me under their wing, and shown me the way. But I've also had some not so great bosses who have really only been concerned for themselves and their career. But what that has taught me is that I definitely don't want to conduct myself in that manner, but also that you have to be your own advocate for yourself. So don't be afraid to ask questions, and definitely don't be afraid to use your voice.
I love that advice. Super advice for anyone going into a new situation.
Yeah.
So think that our time is up. Anisha, am I correct?
Yes, you are correct. We are right on time. But I'm not going to go on video, but I am going to thank all of our panelists for this awesome conversation. I thank all the attendees for the really thoughtful questions and for showing up. And also, I said this in the chat, but I'll say it on the video as well, just so folks know that we will be sending out a list with the 10 tips and all of our panelists' LinkedIn profiles. Samantha said, don't hesitate to reach out via the LinkedIn. So we hope you maybe find some new mentors in this space and have some more guidance and tips for how you want to move forward in your career in tech as you pursue the next steps. So thanks so much to everyone for showing up. Thanks again to our panelists. We're really, really appreciative of your time and energy and thoughtful responses. That's it for tonight. Thanks, everybody.